Good morning. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, everyone.
That's right. Let's give all of ourselves let me turn the music off first of all, so I'm not competing with that. Yes. All right, that makes it a little bit easier. Good morning to everyone here in the room. We have a full house. Please get yourself as much food as you can throughout this event. Eat, meet somebody new. Good morning to everybody online. We have, I think, over 100 people joining us online. Let's give a round of applause for all of this energy. My name is Sasha Goodfriend. I'm the Executive Director of Mass Now, and it's so good to be in person here together. As you all know, this is the 25th anniversary of the Boston Area International Women's Day Breakfast. Our movement is bigger and stronger than ever before, and we are so excited for you to hear from our intergenerational panel of activists today and learn about how you can get involved here in the Boston area in this movement globally. We want to begin by giving a huge heartfelt thank you to Simmons University, our host today, and our host for nearly 25 years. Thank you for the breakfast and for the tech setup and for the people power. Thank you, Megan. Every year on March 8th, we come together to celebrate, uplift, and support efforts to advance gender equity, while also highlighting the achievements of women locally and globally to promote racial and gender equity. And so that's what we're here to do today. And without further ado, I'll hand it off to my sister in service, Ayana.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, that feels so good to hear in person. I don't have to say you're muted. Hi to everyone on Zoom. 25 years ago, this breakfast was created by women leaders who knew the power in our collective voice, right? So it's so beautiful to see how much that sister circle has expanded over the past 25 years. Yes, today, I love the fact that with planning with Sasha and Ogar, our coalition has grown to over 50 organizations that are supporting this event today. So please give yourselves a round of applause for coming together to celebrate women. I also want to thank the Planning Committee for trusting us with the vision of bringing this together. We've been doing this for the past few years over Zoom, and that did not stop our advocacy. So I'm very happy that as we celebrate and look back on 25 years, that we can do so with this great leadership team that I have beside me. And a lot of women have supported us in the creation of this event. So I just want to say thank you to you all. And as a footnote, because we always love to celebrate advances and firsts, from some of my asking, I did notice, and I just want to note and recognize that Ogar and myself, we are the first women of color to lead this event here. So that is a very wonderful thing to say and feel. So I just want to say again, thank you for letting us steward the vision for today. When I think about the gathering we have here, I think if anything, when we think about looking at our past and charting a path forward for the future, we recognize that it takes all women. It takes Black women. It takes brown women. It takes immigrant women. It takes queer and trans women. It takes everyone and allies in order to actualize the reality that we want to see. So in the spirit of sisterhood, we know that we all have a place in this movement. A movement which began early generations before. And it was only recognized by the women who felt the need for change. And I'm happy to say that now that we have Women's History Month and International Women's Day, we have opportunities for us to not only celebrate, but activate our advocacy as we all come together today. So as we hear from our panelists, as you sit next to folks, as you drink your coffee and eat your croissants, feel free to just come together and celebrate the fact that we've made it this far through a turbulent number of years. And through that, I know, just looking at you all, I'm just very excited. It just makes me so hopeful. And I'm just looking at so many women that I've worked with in different capacities, and you've supported me either professionally or personally. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I can't wait for us to go into today's breakfast. So I'm going to pass it off to Agar to share some more remarks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Agar Winnie Okoye. Ladies, can we just give ourselves a round of applause for the energy we are bringing to the movement? Well deserved. Listen, you're going to look around the room today and say hello to the person on your left and hello to the person on your right. Say that right now. Yes. Because you never know. What I know as an older woman, mother of 5, attorney, what I do know is that women are powerful creatures. And you never know that the woman beside you might just be the chisel that your toolbox had been missing. So reach out and make sure you take the numbers today and follow up tomorrow. Okay. So this is our first in-person since the pandemic, and I gave a lot of hugs today, and I hope everyone else had the chance to give hugs today. It was long overdue. So it is also a sold-out event. More than 500 women registered for this event. Round of applause. And there are so many people joining us online as well. And this just goes to show that the movement is strong and vibrant and that we have no choice but to keep going, right? Today, we're going to celebrate the legacy of this movement, the trailblazers, the mothers of this movement who spearheaded this movement. And in the celebration, we will still not lose the sight of the fact that there's still much work to be done, right? So we will still keep moving. And the future generations, I look at my 22-year-old daughter, who, by the way, thinks that I'm a dinosaur in thoughts, and I'm fine with that, that's fine. These younger generations are shattering the glass ceilings and sometimes the concrete ceilings. So we need to keep going. Elena, we need to keep going, right? Yes. Yes. So we thank you, my co-chairs and I, the members of the committee who were just so helpful. The planning behind this was so well thought out, and we are so thrilled that all of you were able to join us today. And let's enjoy ourselves, and let's listen to the speakers, and let's keep fighting the good fight. Thank you.
So, because this is the 25th anniversary, we have some celebrating to do right now. We wanted to start our breakfast today with a recognition of the women that we fondly call in this committee the founding mothers. These were women who 25 years ago took a look at what was going on around in terms of international conferences for women in Beijing and said, what could we do here in Boston to have us all come together and see that we are not just living in a Boston bubble. We are connected to this movement internationally. And then the first year after the brunch, they said, this isn't just a one-year thing. This is a tradition that we need to continue and to teach the leadership and organizing skills to generations of new activists in the Boston area. So we wanted to just take some time to commemorate these women. So as I read their names, please join me in giving them all a round of applause. The first award goes to the woman whose voice is loudest on the planning committee, and for that we love it. You probably are laughing if you already know who I'm talking about, but Marie Turley. Oh, there you are. And for those of you who can't see, this is a vase. And even if you get it, I want you to know you can put a flower in here, whether it's a purple or a yellow flower, whatever color feminist you want. So I'm not sure if this person is here, but Jerry Martinson. Okay, Anissa Asabi George. We will hand this award to you to give to Jerry Martinson. Nancy Ryan. I know you're right here in front. Laurie T. Bailey. Barry.
All right, our next one is for Pat Nickerson. And next we have Samantha Overton. Zooming in, okay. I'm gonna accept this on behalf of Sam's behalf. Hi. Everyone say hi to Sam. There we go. You're not in the room, but we still love and support you. Thank you so much for your leadership. Go ahead.
And the next one is for Diane Hammer. Diane. And the next one is for Jacqueline Cook. Jacqueline! The last, most certainly not the list, is Priscilla Golding. She's not here. Okay. So she was also the first commissioner on the Commission on the Status of Women. So one more round of applause for that. Thank you.
So we have a moment to wait until our next two featured guests, and so we want to give this moment to you to introduce yourself to the folks around the table if you haven't already yet. Share where you're from, if you're affiliated with an organization, and we'll get your attention in just a couple of minutes. Thank you.
All right, as we get settled, I just want to make sure that we're acknowledging some of the star power in the building, some of the leaders that we have on the battlefield today. We have a number of elected officials here supporting this event. We have Councilor Streza from Somerville. Where are you? Thank you for coming. And then for the City of Boston, I do see quite a few folks. I do see Councilor Bach saying hi in the front. And I did also see Councilor Lujan. Awesome. Are there any other elected officials in the building right now? I know we have one on the way, but Okay. We also wanted to shout out the Commission on the Status of Women. Their ED, Shatia Spruell, is here, and she's here with a number of commissioners. We also, from MCSW, we do have Dr. Aisha Miller, who is the vice chair, Meredith Truitt, Kimberly Shea, and, because I don't want to miss anyone, Audra Hall. So thank you. I know we have many other people here. I wish I could shout every last person out that's here. I know, shameless plug, I see quite a few City of Boston folks here. Hi, friends. Hi, families. But yes, just really excited to see so many of you here. So I'm so happy that my calming voices brought us back to back to the speaking program. But we are going to move forward with some of our remarks. So I'm going to invite Ogar up here to introduce our next speaker.
Ladies, give me a second to pull my screen up. Okay. I am so delighted to introduce the next speaker. Simmons University, they have graciously given us space for the over 20 years. Round of applause for Simmons University. I am delighted to introduce the president of Simmons University. Dr. Lynn Perry-Wooten is a seasoned academic. She's an expert on organizational development and transformation, and she became the 9th president of Simmons University on July 1st of 2020. Dr. Wooten is the first African American to lead the university. Round of applause on that. She specializes in crisis leadership, diversity, and inclusion, including positive leadership, organizational behavior, such that reveals and nurtures the highest level of human potential. Dr. Wooten is an innovative leader and a prolific author and presenter. Without much ado, I ask you to join me in giving a rousing welcome to Dr. Perry-Wooten.
Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to Simmons, and happy 25th birthday. It is an honor to have you here, and thank you for that introduction. You know, Simmons is a university that loves to host women-centered organizations that are doing the crucial work for the region, people such as you. When we think about International Women's Day, it's a global recognition designed to celebrate the social, the economic, and cultural and political achievement of women. This day also serves as a call to action. It's what I call leading from the head, the heart, and the hand. It's a call to bring awareness of the variety of issues that impact women, such as gender equality, the pay gap, reproductive rights, just to name a few. This year's theme, I think, is near and dear to all of us Bostonians: embrace equity. It is especially meaningful to me as the president of Simmons University. Our institution was founded on equity and equality more than 120 years ago, during a time when women had not even secured the right to vote, and less than 20% of women had a bachelor's degree. John Simmons had this vision, and we call him a Renaissance man here, that women could be educated and achieve greater financial independence if they got a college degree. Thus, this is the ideal, using education to advance social and economic equity. It is the core and the DNA of Simmons, and it remains the heart of all we do and who we are collectively today. We're proud of our history and the important role we continue to play in Boston and society. But despite these collective gains, we live in a world in many ways that continues to undervalue and underestimate women. I'm struck by the fact that women in colleges are becoming rare at a time when they're needed more than ever. At the peak of our history, there were 200 women colleges. Now only 30 remain today, and Simmons is the only one remaining in Boston. Women's colleges like Simmons have helped to open new doors for first-generation students, students of color, and students from under-resourced backgrounds. Graduates of women's colleges have higher median income 10 years after graduation, and just as important, our graduates are nurses, social workers, librarians, newscasters, and more. And they are committed to doing the good work we need in this world. As I look around the room today of your beautiful faces, I'm aware of and inspired by the fact that each of you can tell equally powerful stories, stories about the work that you're doing to advance women's equality and equity. And as we celebrate International Women's Day, the achievement of women's leaders, I hope we continue to support and lift each other, and we collectively strive to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow while honoring our history, thus with the goal to create a more just society. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for being part of the movement. Thank you, because of you, I know that my daughter will have a better world to lead in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, President Wooten, and another, give me a microphone, I won't make shameless plugs. Of all of the great things that I know about Dr. Wooten, she is also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Okay, I see you, my sister and my soror. Thank you so much for your words. I feel honored to be kind of sandwiched in between two great women that I look up to. As a personal effect, I know when I first moved to Boston in 2018, there was a tide of change when it came to what it looks like to be a woman leader in Boston. I know I casted my first vote when I lived in Roxbury for now Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. And seeing that she came from such a great city council, I said I have to learn more about who's leading the city that I live in. And through those years, I really got to know then Councilor Michelle Wu and the work that she's done to advocate to build a city for us all. So I will take a personal point of privilege for us to receive the first elected woman of color in the city of Boston, our Mayor Michelle Wu.
Good morning, everyone. Please don't get up. Good morning. It is wonderful to see you all, and happy International Women's Day. We celebrate our incredible leaders across every sector all throughout the year and every single month, but it is fun to get some time together and just be here in person. I think over the years I have been at this event in this very room celebrating with many of you all, and to see the tables full today with incredible leadership from all across our city is just what I needed, what I personally needed this morning. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do for our city. I want to recognize Ayanna not only for her role as one of the co-chairs planning and putting together this amazing event. Thank you. But for your day-to-day work. I was so proud and so excited to hear that we had gotten you into City Hall and into a leadership role, and it's been so fun to see you around the table in the moments where we've been making important decisions and setting the course for our future. So shout out to Ayanna. Thank you to your fellow co-chairs, the Planning Committee, Sasha and Winnie, and everyone who's been involved. Dr. Lynn Perry-Wooten, of course, what an incredible role model and partner in the work of our city. We're so grateful for her direct leadership in city issues like ensuring our workforce and growth match the goals that we have for equity and sustainability, in partnering directly with our library system and ensuring that we can continue to draw talent locally and connect every opportunity to our residents. Thank you for your leadership. We're so in awe of what you're doing here. I get to sit at a table with the panel who you'll hear from, just change makers, trailblazers, and those who have been fighting to keep the doors wide open for many to come through. So to Karen and Beth and Patricia, Elena, Grace, thank you for what you do, and can't wait to hear your insights as well. I know there's a lot of people to thank in this room, but I want to get through a list because the work that we do every day is only possible with partners from all around. I have several colleagues who are elected officials here as well. I'm told that City Councilor Ruthie Louis-Jean is here. Here's Ruthie, at-large City Councilor. I have City Councilor Kenzie Bach on my list. Kenzie's in the back. I am told that my former colleague from the City Council, Anissa Sabi-George, now Madam President in her new role, running an organization that is her passion. Nice to see you. Good morning. Did I miss anyone in elected office who is here? Councilor Streisel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for always showing up and making sure that our two cities, and Somerville and Boston, are working very closely together. We also have leaders from City Hall and in the administration. I want to give a shout out to our Chief of Equity and Inclusion, Maria Angeli Solis-Cervera. Director of our Mayor's Office of Women's Advancement, Alexandra Valdez. Our Senior Advisor on issues of equity and justice, Lori Nelson. Someone who is indispensable, and she and her team are often called on for every event, and we're trying to make sure it's not at the last moment. The director of the Language Access Office, Jennifer Wong. And shout out to all of our city employees here. I think I see folks who are from neighborhood services, from all different departments, from our equity cabinet. Thank you for what you do. Okay, I've already shouted out enough people to take up my time, but this is the beauty of working in Boston today. I remember when I first started coming to these events early on as a young city councilor, there weren't that many shout outs to give in terms of women in elected office and women leading institutions in various spaces. Today, we are nowhere near where we need to be still, but we've come a long way as a city and as a Commonwealth. It is inspiring every day to be able to look at every level, from our congressional delegation to our U.S. attorney, our state elected officials, right? 5 out of 6 constitutional offices held by women as of January. And feel like finally we are seeing a little bit of the representation in leadership catch up to where the energy has been in community and on the ground for a long time. We know that commemorating 25 years of International Women's Day celebrations means that we have to not only look back, but look forward. And so thanks to you and your leadership, we now have a dedicated space to come together and celebrate Boston's women. We have a strong and growing network of trailblazers and innovators, women with experience and leadership and courage and candor, who have fought battles not only for themselves and this generation, but to ensure that the next generation will have fewer battles to fight. We have a community, one where we don't need to explain or justify our presence,
but where we can count on being supported and recognized, understood, celebrated, and inspired by each other. This is a community driven by a shared sense of responsibility to bring about a brighter, bolder, and more equitable future. I remember when I first joined the council, that election year in 2013, we doubled the number of women serving from 1 to 2 when I joined Ayanna on the council. And I was always described as one of the women counselors, right? This term woman counselor was constantly being used. And even when then Councilor Asabi George and Councilor Campbell were elected and we went from 2 to 4 women, it was still always, well, what are the women counselors working on or doing? I think it was really the next year when we got to 6 out of 13 that I haven't really heard the term woman counselor ever since, because it's just the norm in Boston and the majority, in fact. We need to get to that, past those tipping points, past those kind of boxes of, well, not only are we okay with seeing a few women or seeing a few people of color, women of color, young people in elected office, but when you're still in the very few, when you're still right at the vanguard, you're defined as that. We have to get to a place where we see leadership in all its various forms and facets, and to recognize the diversity within being a woman leader, within being a woman of color leader. And we are getting closer every day in Massachusetts, thanks to the momentum and the faith that our residents have had in ensuring that representation matters, but also that we are putting the best people in the job in all of these cases. So thank you so much for all the work that's happening. We have some incredible progress and accomplishments to celebrate on policy, on programs that Alex and her office have been leading. We are looking to ensure that in every community, it is just a guarantee that there will be space for all of us to really ensure all of our intersectional identities are not only part of the conversation, but leading it. So it is a huge honor to be here with you. Happy International Women's Day again, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Wu. It is such a treat to be with you in person. Thank you for coming. Now, without further ado, I am going to welcome our moderator, Karen Holm-Wards, to join us, as well as our panelists. We have Elena Serpas, Grace Sterling-Stoll, Patricia Montez, and am I forgetting one, or was that all 4? Oh, and Beth Chandler, of course. So please come up, grab a seat. And if you have an empty seat next to you, maybe you can just raise your hand at your table and some lingering people can know that they can come find a seat next to you. Awesome. Thank you.
Mayor Michelle Wu, I know, has a very busy day today. And I just wanted us to take a moment and send her all of the positive energy from the women in this room. Yes. Mayor Wu talked about being on the city council and being defined as one of the women. Then after there were 6 women on the council, the word women was dropped from the conversation. But Mayor Wu is walking right now in the steps of being the first and the only. And all of us in this room know what it's like to be a powerful woman in the first and the only position. So we just want to send you our love and support and encourage you to fight the good fight. So just a little bit of housekeeping. You know, somebody brought up the sororities. I am not in either an AKA or a Delta. I'm in a sorority called Me Phi Me. But since you brought up Deltas, my sister-in-law, Elsie Cook Holmes, is your national president of Delta Sigma Theta. Okay, all right, does that get me in today? Okay, all right. We're looking forward to this conversation today. We have some very esteemed thought leaders to join us in this conversation about embracing equity. And I am going to encourage you to go online and read their bios. They're so accomplished, we don't have time to read all of the things that they've done. Beth Chandler, immediately to my left, joined the YW Boston in November 2012, and she's doing excellent work carrying out the Y's mission to eliminate racism. Elena Serpas is a senior at Cambridge Rindge and Latin High School, very accomplished. And Grace Sterling Stoll has been a pioneering activist and leader in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, youth, transgender, and social justice communities for over 40 years. Welcome, Grace. And Patricia Montes is a recognized immigrants' rights leader and a tireless advocate for just economic and social policies, including a just U.S. immigration policy. Let's welcome all of our panelists this morning. So to begin, I am going to start with Patricia and have you just tell us in 2 or 3 minutes what makes you excited about the work that you do? Why are you passionate about your work?
I believe in justice. I grew up, but thank you for the invitation and congratulations to all of you. I grew up in a very poor family in a rural area in Honduras, and I think that my passion is connected with the suffering of the people, but also with the resiliency of people of color, particularly of women. I grew up with a lot of women in the rural area fighting for justice, and I believe in justice. And I have been living in Boston for the past 15 years, working mostly with Central American women, and I see them every single day struggling with many things, racism, many things, because we're still living in a very classist, patriarchal, and racist society. And I love working with them because I think that every single day they give me a lot of energy to keep fighting every single day.
Thank you. Grace, what's passion? What fills you with passion with the work that you do?
Can you all hear me? Oh, great. So most people know me as Executive Director of BAGLY, the Boston Alliance of LGBTQ Youth. So that has been my work and passion for the past 40 plus years. I came to BAGLY as it was newly founded as a young person myself, seeking community, and I stayed to help the organization grow and continue to support young people in the decades since. I don't think I have to tell anyone in this room that LGBT and especially transgender young people and adults are being targeted in a very specific and negative way from the highest levels of this country of elected officials. And our communities have, despite the progress that we've made, especially here in Massachusetts and with the support of supportive leaders like Mayor Wu and the other folks in this room, we are facing a backlash that is unprecedented in scope and sophistication. And so what continues to inspire me is the young people and their passion and their commitment to creating a world that is better than the one that I grew up in and many of us in the room grew up in, and to help move us forward. So I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of young people, to your right, Elena.
Can you all hear me? Hi, everyone. So I think I'm driven a lot by the high school I've grown up in. I go to a high school in Cambridge, Cambridge Rindge and Latin. Cambridge is public high school. Go Cambridge! And I am surrounded by so many young people who are activists, who are organizing, who are creating spaces in our school that not only welcome but celebrate and ingrain youth activism into the fabrics of our school. I am so driven by the other young people I see around me, working to dismantle the systems of oppression, racism, misogyny, all of these systems. I'm driven by the people in my family and the other leaders who are women and community members who have kind of brought me into this work. And I think just seeing all of us working intergenerationally to create a better future and one where we all feel more seen and more valued is what drives me. And I am very excited to be here today with all of you.
Excellent, excellent. Beth, what is it about your work that drives you?
do I need to answer with Elena here? I could just be done. So for those that don't know me, I'm Beth Chandler. I use the She series, and I'm president and CEO of YW Boston. Our work is to eliminate racism and empower women. And I am a Black woman who also identifies as LGBTQ. I have lived my life with those three marginalized identities. I know what it means to have those and to live in a world that is filled with contradictions because of those identities. And so I work for the organization that I do so other folks with those identities and others aren't marginalized because of it.
Okay, well said. So we are here in the 25th anniversary of this wonderful International Women's Day breakfast. I'd like each of you to define, in your words, feminism and the feminist movement today, and what you see or what you think, how do you think that this definition has differed from 25, 50, even 100 years ago, and how has it evolved? Who would like to start with that? Beth.
Oh, you said who? I didn't put my hand
I
up.
know. But you made eye contact with me, so.
Look away. So it's a fascinating question to me because, to be honest, I would not have defined myself as a feminist. Quite honestly, it was a word I ran away from. I thought of women burning bras, and I grew up in a family where we didn't have a lot of money, so if I burned my bra, I was stuck. So I just never, it was not a word for a long time that really felt inclusive to me. And there were also, moments where women of color were involved in the movement, but then when push came to shove, they were asked to sit down or not join the march. Or meetings were held and they couldn't, they were jeopardizing their families and their livelihood to show up, and that wasn't recognized. So I struggle with defining feminism and the movement because I never really felt a part of it. I believe strongly in fighting for the rights of women and those who identify as women. That is part of the work that we do at YW. So if that's being a feminist, then I guess I am one. I think the term has changed, or at least my thinking of it has changed. I think the movement is becoming more inclusive, but I think as Ayanna shared, this is the first year in 25 years that we had women of color who were helping to put the event on. I mean, so 25 years in a city of Boston where we think we're very enlightened, I mean, that says something, right? 25 years and the first time we had co-chairs that were women of color. So for me, feminism has not been as inclusive as I think it needs to be so that I would really feel comfortable saying I am a part of this movement. So I hope I answered your question.
No, that's fine. Yeah, Elena.
Yeah, I remember one day going to a club discussion that was organized by students of color at our school, and a lot of people were talking about how they didn't identify with the feminist movement and how to them what they were fighting for, it was an action. It was the action of fighting for equity, of bringing other women in. And so I think to me, I think about women who are bringing other women in, and I think about mentorship and guidance.
Mm-hmm. And that's what feminism means to you. Thank you. As you start your lifetime's work, do you feel that you are a feminist?
I think I fight for the things that feminism does.
Mm-hmm.
Gender liberation, our families being safe, all of these things. And I think I have had a lot of intersectional feminist leaders in my life who I've really learned from and who I kind of want to be one day.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're all in this room.
Yes, they are.
Grace, what about the label feminism, feminist movement? What comes to mind when you look at where we are today and looking back to the beginning of it?
Well, I'm old enough to remember. I'm 65, 66 this year, and so from the very beginning, as a gender nonconforming child growing up in the 60s, I didn't have the language that we have now to talk about my identity and my experience, but I knew I didn't feel like a boy, and I most definitely knew that I wasn't going to grow up to be a man. And so I instinctively identified and saw as role models women, first and foremost my mother, my grandmother Ann's women that I knew in the community. And so for me, I had to sort of form an identity with really no role models other than cisgender women. And so I felt before the label was even there that I understood and embraced a feminist movement, but didn't know that I could be part of that as a transgender woman. And I didn't see transgender women, and certainly 50 plus years ago, mostly the visible representation was white, cisgender, heterosexual women of a certain class level. And so Christian women, you can go through all the litany of who was included in the definition of women and who was struggling to be recognized within that. So I always had a resonance with the feminist movement and the values, and saw in that a reflection in some way of my own experience, at the same time that I felt outside of that and feeling like I needed to find community in different ways. So yes, I identify as a feminist and certainly embrace and feel it's important for that definition to be ever expanding to include all women.
Excellent. Patricia.
Yes, I consider myself a feminist, and I believe that we need to change the history of that, the face of that movement. And every time that I think about that, I think about Latin America, because I'm a Latina, not just a Latina living in the United States. I grew up in Latin America. I went to school in a poor country in Central America. It's not the same going to, being poor in the United States and that being poor in a Latino country. So I believe that I'm learning a lot about the history of the movement here in the United States and also in my own region in Latin America. I believe that actually in Latin America, we don't use the word celebration because the history of our history, our struggle is connected with a lot of blood, a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. And here too, we use the word commemoration because we need to honor all these women who died fighting for systemic changes, not just here in in New York, right? But the ones that were fighting in Latin America, in Africa, in many other countries that sometimes are invisible. And I'm 100% with you. This movement is not just white. There are many colors, right? And we need to change. Obviously, we need to change the system, but we also need to change the movement because the movement had to be more inclusive.
Thank you, Patricia. Patricia, you have a global perspective. What do you see as one of the biggest successes of the women's movement?
That now I think the intersection between justice and between migration, between many other issues, because women are everywhere, right? We are everywhere. And I believe that working with the new generations is extremely important, but also learning from the elders. Because I don't like when I see the youth saying, oh, we're going to change the world. Yes, you will. But we also need to learn from many others that have been fighting before us and honor your legacy, your history, and learn. I like reading, but I also like having conversations with other women. I would like to know you. I would like to know your history. I would like to know why you're there, your suffering, your pain, and build bridges. I would like, actually, because I believe that we all say, oh, Boston is very progressive. Let me tell you that I don't think that Boston is very progressive, right? Or we always say, oh, Massachusetts is the best in the country. Excuse me, but it's not. And, I live in East Boston. I work with undocumented women, and sometimes I believe that we're living in silos. And we have a good understanding about, feminism, many things, but sometimes that is very elite, and it's very, coming from the academia. I'm sorry, I'm not saying that all the people in academia are like that, but sometimes you don't go to the neighborhoods. Right? Do you know what is happening in Boston? Sometimes you don't know. Do you know what is happening with the women that are coming to this place to clean at night? Do you know their histories? Because sometimes our movement is very elite. I see, oh, you're a professor, you're a student, but I don't know about Maria that is coming to clean this building at night. So I think that we need to learn a lot and we need to do more.
I see Elena nodding their head. What do you see as a success, or would you like to comment on some of the things Patricia just said? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, yes, Patricia for president. I think it is so important to approach this through hearing stories. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I am like so grounded and feel so comfortable being here today is just like having listened to the stories of my mom and my tias and my grandmothers, and hearing how their experiences with similar systems and similar places have all led us to have similar experiences, and how we can use that to try and make a change and to try something out that's not the norm, that's not the status quo. And I loved what you said about hearing everybody's stories, not just those who are most visible, who are most polished, who are at the top, but everyone across all levels.
Great. Grace, what do you see as one of the biggest successes of the women's movement, and what needs to be done?
You know, I think one of the history of any social justice movement is often trying to secure basic legal protections, develop basic policies, support the representation of members of the community, and part of the success is being able to do those things. But it's also one of the challenges because, unfortunately, what often happens is that the more privileged members of that marginalized group are usually the first folks to benefit. They're usually the folks who maybe get elected or maybe are in that leadership role or are put out front. And so it's always the challenge of any movement moving forward to say who is still not at the table, who is being left behind, who is not being represented. How do we continue to expand the movement to include all the folks that we say we're trying to represent? So I think the success of the movement is, of course, the undeniable progress over decades and longer. But at the same time, the challenges that we know are true, that we still have a very long way to go.
Thank you. I'm going to switch up, Beth, and move to a different question, a different category, which plays off of what Grace just said. Women are often competing against one another, as we all know. In fact, BIPOC women often complain that they don't feel supported by their white counterparts. How can we be more supportive and collaborative, which translates to an effective movement within the movement as we continue this fight towards gender equity?
I get the easy question. Oops.
All right, so I think one way to think about this question for me is that often in movements there's the oppression Olympics, right? And who is more persecuted, more marginalized than someone else, and what about my issues? And then that gets us to be siloed because we're thinking about our own personal issues and not collectively about the issues and those that are most marginalized in the group, right? And so for me, I think in getting people to be able to truly be allies, it's thinking about how do you look at what the issues are, looking at some of the data and saying who really is the most left out by data, right? What is the data saying and how can we focus there? Because I believe as, you know, for those that are most marginalized, as they get lifted up, everybody benefits, right? We all win because the strategies that you're gonna use to help those that are most disenfranchised are strategies that are gonna benefit everybody. And so really thinking about who is the most left out and how do we help them rise because we will all rise. So that to me is a way to think about how do we lift everybody up? How do we stop fighting amongst us for the crumbs? Because we shouldn't be fighting for crumbs, and that's what we're fighting for, right? Instead of thinking about what does the whole loaf look like and how do we all get the loaf, we're like, oh, I want my little piece, I'm gonna fight really hard for that. And we lose sight of the big thing. And the big thing is, how do we think about what are the issues that are similar across? What are the issues for folks who are, when we're looking at data, the most left out? And how do we lift them up? Because ultimately we'll all benefit and we'll all get that loaf, and actually the loaf will get larger.
Yes, and in terms of getting the loaf, making the loaf larger, this data tells the story. The pay gap persists. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, an article released in December 2022, overall women earned about 82 cents for every dollar men earned. Asian women earned 85 cents on a dollar. Black women still earned 61 cents on a dollar, while white women earned about 80 cents on a dollar. Hispanic Latinas earned 58 cents on the dollar. How can we better organize to challenge, break down this systemic racism that allows these injustices to persist. And this is right in the Y's wheelhouse.
So part of it's transparency, right? People need to know the numbers. They need to know what's happening within their organization. So there's the Boston Women's Workforce Council that is pushing for organizations across Greater Boston to share their data on who's earning what. And you're not looking at individuals, but groups of people. So you can look at the data in your organization and are there gaps? And if there are gaps, why? Can you explain those gaps, right? Often it's that women are in positions that are often lower paid because they're predominantly women positions, right? And so there's already something built into the system. There are, women are sometimes penalized when they advocate for more money, right? It's okay for men to negotiate their salary and women get penalized, right? So there are inequities in this system and how we're supposed to be fighting for our wages, right? So organizations can look at their data, they can say, hey, are we seeing statistical differences between people by gender, by other identities, and if so, why does that exist, and what are we gonna do to rectify that? And what are your processes for promotions, right? Do you have something inside your organization where you can really look at the work that people are doing and how are they performing to meet that work and those goals, and are they advancing because of that, or is it because they're friends with somebody and somebody likes someone so they promote them? Right? How do you institutionalize some policies and practices so they're applicable across the organization regardless of how people identify? And that's going to benefit everybody. No one gets harmed by that because it is more fair, because you're treating, you're paying people based on their performance, not because of who they know and if you like them. And often men get a benefit of having kids, right? If you have the data shows as a man, if you're a dad, then people say, oh my God, I have to give you more money because you're supporting a family. When women have children, people say, oh my God, I have to fire you or put you on the mommy track because you're not going to be as committed because you're taking care of your family, right? So how do we look at that and make sure those conversations aren't happening, or when they are, that somebody interjects and says, you know what, I'm going to ask Diane if she wants this opportunity for growth and possibly work overseas, because this is time for her to do that. And if she wants to make a different choice, that is her choice to make, but I'm not going to make it for her, or I'm not going to allow the boss to make that for her. I'm going to let her make her own damn decision, right? So that's how we can address some of this.
Patricia, you mentioned, wondering about the Maria, the name you picked, the woman who cleans Simmons College overnight, who may not be in the room right now. How do we help BIPOC women meet challenges that they're facing at home and in the workplaces? How do we help the people like Maria?
Thank you for that question, because Maria is real, and she cleaned here, by the way. I use another name, but it's real. Mm-hmm. She's a member, and she is very active. I think it's important to understand, and we need to hold ourselves accountable too, no? I'm not just talking about this school, but in general, right? Are we checking the companies that are, bringing people to clean to our schools, right? Because in the case of Maria and many others that are cleaning in other universities and other places, they work for a few months and then they need to go home because the company said, oh, the students are not here, so you need to go back home and I'm going to hire you again. So that's kind of labor exploitation, But anyway, I think this is a systemic issue that we need to resolve. And I love what you were saying about, it's not about thinking about who is going to be more oppressed, right? It's about working together to change the system. But it requires to build bridges. It requires to have more solidarity among the movements. In our case, as Centro Presente, for example, we're having conversations with people like Maria, and we're talking about transgender women. Because when we go to church in Latin America, they say, oh no, that's a pecado, you can't do that, right? So we need to unlearn many things in order to be, because otherwise we're going to be part of the oppressor too. Or racism, systemic racism in our countries, colorism, oh no, black is bad. You need to be white because it's beautiful. So we need to learn and unlearn all these, systems of oppression that have been there forever in our countries of origin and here in the United States. So how can we help Maria knowing her story? Because Maria's story is not unique. what is happening with Maria is happening with thousands of Central American women and Latinos, and Black people too. And we need to learn from each other. I honor the Black community in the United States. And I always read, and I want to learn about your history because I think it's a very beautiful and painful history. But I don't find spaces where can I go, as a Latina to have a conversation with people like you, right? I would like to have a mentor like you. I would love to. But I think that for me, it's about building solidarity. It's about having access to more information. And it's also about building the bridges, right? And that aspect of class is in the United States, oh my goodness, in Latin American too, in the Latin American region too. Students sometimes, they don't feel comfortable connecting with workers, even if they are women. But at the end of the day, we said, I'm a feminist. Think about it. Think about it, because as I said before, we still live in a society that is very patriarchal, classist, and racism is everywhere.
Grace, how do we build bridges? How do we become better allies for each other and break down some of these barriers?
One of the things that we talk about at Bagley with young people, and it so resonated when we talked about Oppression Olympics. It's the only game that if you win, you lose. And so I'm thinking, what is the goal here? And what does that mean? And so, yes, I agree with what Beth and others have said around lifting up the most marginalized, because that helps all of us. The goal is to help us all win. And not to leave anyone behind. And so what we talk about at Bagley with young people, which is to say that every single one of us has parts of our identities and experience that are discriminated, where we experience discrimination and oppression. But also every single one of us have parts of our identities and experience that are more privileged. And so each of us has the obligation to educate ourselves not only about where we experience discrimination and oppression, but about our privilege. And are we actively allying? Are we looking at the dimensions of privilege and allying with other communities in service of that, and not just focusing on, and this is what I need from you all around what I'm experiencing in terms of oppression. And so if we're all doing that, then it shifts the focus from pointing fingers at others or trying to be in a certain position in relation to others, and say we all have work to do. And we all need to work together collectively. And I really appreciate the conversation around data. Until recently, we had very little data, and it's still relatively recently around gay, lesbian, bisexual identities and communities and experience. There's still more research to be done. There's absolutely not enough data on transgender people, especially transgender women. So we don't even have the statistics, except we know that transgender people are, and especially trans women, and even more especially trans women of color, are at increased risk for violence and every form of discrimination. So some might say that if we're really focusing on trans women of color who are queer, who are economically challenged, who are not citizens of this country, who are neurodivergent, who are experiencing, we could go on. If we are focusing on what works for that community, then that will help all of us.
Elena, how can we support the emergence of more young women leaders at all levels of society, leaders like you?
I go back to mentorship, about what it looks like to have somebody who shares an identity with you bring you into this work. I think that was the case for me several times, and I had a mentor. I'll never forget her. She told me, it was, I think, a quote from an old South African proverb that basically said, don't help me, don't fight for me because you want to help me or because you want to save me. Fight for me because my liberation is bound with yours. And I think, yeah, it resonated with me. And I think that creating mentorship where the objective is, like the other panelists have said, working for that liberation that works for not just the people at the top, but the people who are at the intersections of a lot of identities. So mentorship, it's thinking intersectionally, and it's also just trying it out, like we're doing here today. We're trying something out today. We're coming together and we're talking about the ideas we have for the future generations. And I think that's radical. I think that's awesome, and it's good that we're trying.
Mm-hmm. Elena, there are many women in the room who are around your age. What advice do you have for some of the young women here in the room who are venturing into leadership roles and maybe even politics?
Hi, let's be friends. No, let's be friends. Let's support each other. I think I love like sharing like experiences and just tips. It can be great to just have conversations. I think we keep coming back to like what it's like to listen and to meet somebody new, to introduce ourselves to each other with our stories, with our goals, and with what we want to do. And connecting, I think that what we're doing right now is we're connecting with each other, and there's immense power in that.
Great. Beth, you alluded to this. Women primarily play the role of caregivers to their parents and children, while at the same time balancing the demands of their work life. And there's, as we've already mentioned, unequal distribution of household labor. It's kind of still the norm as it was 25 years ago. You know, I think women are taking care of the kids, cleaning the house, getting people to soccer. You know, I'm making somewhat of a stereotype, but you understand my point here. Burnout and mental health challenges have skyrocketed in recent years. How can we better challenge the power structures within the political, the economic, and social arenas to help women meet these challenges or change the balance of the challenges that we face?
It's a great question. I don't know if I have an answer. I have thoughts, though. I think one is to get rid of busyness. We are a society that values being busy, right? And you ask people, how are you? Busy. Oh, I'm busy. And then people think, oh, wow, that's great, you're busy. But it's not about being busy, right? I can be busy and get nothing done. So it's really about being far more intentional. And I think as employers, we can focus on what are the outcomes I need you to do in your job. And I'm not going to care as much about if you do it 9 to 5 or 5 to 9, like whatever works for you. If we're clear on the outcomes, if you can work with the people you need to within the org, within your schedule, then go forth and do, right? So I think that can help provide people with a little more flexibility to get things done when they can get things done and not worry about having to just look busy because it looks good, because it doesn't actually do anything but make people exhausted, and it doesn't push the work forward. I think the other thing is we as a country need to find ways to create, to support more mental health workers. We have a lack of people in the field, and part of that might be because we don't pay them well, right? But they are extraordinarily important, and I think all age groups are showing increased stress and mental health needs, and particularly young people. We don't have enough people to support that. So I think also figuring out as a society, how do we value that work and how do we pay people so they can do that work since people have that need. I also think, particularly because of COVID and the fact that we're also still working hybrid, that we're losing connection with other human beings. And while there is value of being able to work remotely, work at home, that flexibility, I think there's a downside because we lose that connection. And depending on who's in our house, and God knows if you're in mine, you don't really want to be in your house because you got the kids, you got the dogs. It's not good for your mental health. But being able to be with the people you work with and build trust and build community, that matters, that's value. Like being able to show up and say, you know what, I have a best friend at work. If folks are familiar with Gallup, that's one of the questions on the survey. And people think like, why do I need to have a best friend at work? It's really about, is there somebody that you think cares for you at your job, right? That you're happy to see and talk with. So it doesn't mean they have to be your best friend, but you have to feel a connection at work. And if we're not feeling those connections because we're all working remotely, I think that also makes work more stressful because we're just not getting that support we need. So those are just some ideas on how we can support people to have the flexibility that they need, to get the support that they need in the challenges that they're having around, and hopefully if people are feeling supported, if people are feeling they can do the work that they need to do in the way that they need to do it, that will reduce some of the mental stresses that folks are feeling.
I support getting unbusy. Yes. Grace, you spoke about this earlier, but I'd ask you just to elaborate a little bit more on it. In what ways has the gender expansive definition of women benefited the movement for gender equality?
You know, this is such an important point because, you know, the more we're able to expand the definition of women to include all women, I was part of a conversation a few decades back where it was a group of cisgender women talking about the beginnings of sort of what it would look like for trans inclusion in the programs that they were running, and we had to sort of get past the notion that somehow trans women are not women and that trans women weren't being added on. It was recognizing that women is a much broader term and refers to a much broader group of people than simply cisgender white heterosexual women of a certain class, as it had often been advocated for. And it benefits. We've said before, it always benefits to have the fullest representation in the room, to benefit from the expertise and ideas and energy and passions of the whole community, all in service of making sure that no one is left behind. And so it benefits the individuals, it benefits the movement, and the intersections. You know, all we have to do is recognize that bodily autonomy is a women's issue. It's a transgender issue. It's an issue facing for so many communities in so many ways. And so one of the challenges is that many of our movements, not just the women's movement, have got their start in a narrow way, and we become siloed. So we're saying, oh, that's a women's issue, that's a race issue, that's a gender issue, that's a class issue, that's an immigrant issue, or a youth issue or an elder issue, and saying, no, that's all of these issues impact all of us in many different ways if only we do the work to figure that out. So as trans people are, the bans on gender affirming care that are being enacted in states across the country, that's a women's issue. It also relates to the issue of bodily autonomy and Roe v. Wade. It's all of these are connected. It's the same thing as gay men struggling around access to PrEP. And so we can make the connections, and if we're making the connections between communities, we're recognizing that all of us collectively really are in the majority, and we should not have a minority of folks dictating what is best for us.
Mm-hmm. We have a virtual crowd joining us today, and I think we have some questions from our virtual attendees. Go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thanks to the folks online. Definitely have some claps in the chat for the words that you've shared with us today. So this question is from Erica. She would love to learn more about feminism and feminists across the globe. Would like to know across the panel, do you have any recommendations for resources, podcasts, anything for folks who want to kind of learn more about feminism across the world?
Let's go down the line and start with Beth. Anything you're reading, listening to?
I was going to pass to Patricia.
Okay.
I have recommendations, of course, that are from the Latino community in Central America. Agencia Ocote is a really good podcast for young people, and I love them. It's in Spanish, but you can create your own in English. We need more alternative media, and you're experts on that. I actually need a training. But I believe that also Somos Muchas is a very important organization led by young people in Honduras. They are doing a lot of work around all these issues, and I think it's important to support them. Talking about alternative media, that's another issue that is very important for us, because sometimes the media is not necessarily, sending the message that is coming from the people, right? So building our own alternative media is also important. I think it's very revolutionary to create our own channels of communication. Is very important, right? To challenge the system and to create our own messages. Yeah, that's the recommendation that I have. But I also want to say something that is not connected with that question, actually, because I don't know what time I will finish in this panel.
Just a few moments.
Oh, a few moments. So I have an announcement, if I can.
Sure.
I have actually another Maria here, but she's not Maria. Her name is Catherine. Catherine has been active with Centro Presente for the past 6 months, and we have a campaign because Catherine, and many, 10 other Central American women were discriminated against at the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. And Catherine is now an activist defending her rights. And she is spending today, International Women's Day, with us the entire day with Centro Presente. And she's here, Catherine, please. And today we have an action. Where's the sign? And I have also Daniela, who is a community organizer. She's an undocumented immigrant. She's a DACA holder. We have an action today at noon in East Boston, and we also have a community gathering at 6 p.m. Just go to your phone, look for our organization, and share it. That's an action that you can do today to support the struggle of these 10 Central American women that were discriminated at the East Boston Area Health Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Anybody else on the panel have a resource, a podcast, a book, something you'd like to recommend in response to the question we just had? Yes.
Not so much a specific reference, but just a practice that as you're looking for resources, make sure you work to vet them and make sure that they're intersectional in their approach. Who's in leadership? What communities are they connecting to? What's their focus? If it looks single issue or siloed, stay clear. If it looks like it's an organization or movement that is representing the broadest representation, then look into that further.
And read through to make sure it's not propaganda of a damaging kind, right? Yeah. Okay, we have another question, virtual.
Yes, the next virtual question is from Dr. Corinne. How are some women coping with stress coming back into the workplace after COVID? While you ponder on that, I'm just going to also say we are taking 1 or 2 questions from the audience that's here. So if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring a mic to you for the next one.
I mean, I think many women are struggling with how are they coming back to work, particularly if it's in the office after COVID. And I think it depends on, for many women who are in more white-collar jobs, it might be a little easier to go back. I think for many women who are in blue-collar jobs or hourly workers, they never left the office. Like, they had to be in. And I don't think we often recognize just the toll that put on those women. And often those women are living and still are living paycheck to paycheck, and they had no choice. They were putting themselves at the greatest risk for all of us, and they were not even they weren't compensated for it, and still aren't compensated for it. So I think depending on where a person sits in sort of the organization, how they're dealing with coming back. 1, they may have already been back and never left. 2, they may have the flexibility to still, work remotely, hybrid. I think it all depends. I think everybody's struggling with the mental toll that this time has been taking on people. And I think, again, depending on your resources, your organization, there may be more resources available to help people through that. Some organizations are able to have healthcare where they can help people access mental health supports, and other people can't. And I think, again, that's something that organizations need to be really mindful of and thinking about it, even if there are low-lift ways that you can maybe give employees a day off, right? You may not be able to pay for them to go see somebody for mental health, but can you give people a mental health day? Can you think about, on Fridays that there are no meetings, right? No meeting Fridays, and that might help to take some burdens off. I think there are some low-lift things that aren't going to be financially burdensome for organizations to think about, to be more intentional, to help employees address some of the mental health, just fatigue and challenges they're facing.
Thank you. Do we have audience questions? Anyone in the audience have a question? Well, yes, right here. Meredith, thank you.
Good morning, sisters. Why are you guys being so shy? Since you was shy, I have a question that, sorry, go over this way so you ladies can see me. So my question is a deep question. what are your thoughts about feminine rivalry? I see a room full of strong women in here, and I just want to bring that out into the atmosphere. What are your thoughts? What can you suggest? How can we all deal with feminine rivalry?
Who wants to start with that response? Little player hating between women, little snip, 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 little how come she got it and I didn't, all that little stuff.
I can say one thing that's always helped me in the community is one, I so value the folks who took the time to mentor me and support me and encourage me and believe in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And my late mother was, the first person who did that for me. And so I think for me, what I try to carry into my work is that, I'm just a placeholder. We're all just placeholders to move the movement along and to do what we can. And we should be lifting as we climb. We should be making sure that the folks who are even newer or who are coming up in the ranks have the opportunities, and hopefully not quite as rocky as we did.
But
and
Grace,
so,
you must have been in a circumstance where a woman, came at you in the wrong way. How do you deflate that, take the energy out of that personal confrontation situation?
It's a great question, because there certainly have been times as a trans woman where there have been cis women who didn't even validate or recognize my identity or my right to be in the space. And so I know personally, I've tried to get to know that person, to try to on a one-to-one level, so that I'm not just a nameless, faceless person, and understand what was important to them and is important to them, and a little bit about their struggle, and hopefully share a bit about mine. And if we can get that far, hopefully to have a conversation about, neither one of us are in power in the situation. How can we support each other and help others along as well?
Patricia, how do you get past those awkward one-on-one moments between women?
It's very hard. But I will be 50 next year. And I'm like, I am not in high school anymore, to be competing. And I respect girls that are going to high school, don't take me wrong. But the thing is, that's also violence against us. And it's because the economic system that we have is always putting us to compete. Oh, your hair, you're like, I don't want to say the bad word, but I believe that's why, we need to be competing each other all the time. And that's because the system is putting us to do that. And we need to try to work together in order to deconstruct that, because that's capitalism that is telling us every single day that we need to be better, that we need to be this, we need to be that. No, just deconstruct that. We all are beautiful. We all can give something different to the movement, to your family, to your work, to everything, right? So, we as a Latina, you have to be this, you have to be skinny, you have to be that. No, I celebrate all of you. Even if you have, whatever you want to wear, whatever you want, the color, everything. We all are beautiful if we respect our differences. Right?
Yes.
Your color, the color of your skin, everything. That is important.
Respect.
Because otherwise, we're also being the oppressor.
Yes.
If we don't do that. Yeah.
Elena, have you had any awkward moments with women, and how did you deflate the negativity?
Well, I'm grateful for the question, and I think it's a really good one. Even already, the competition is exhausting. It doesn't feel good to compete. It doesn't make me feel good. And I think that sometimes it might come from, there have been times, even me, I noticed another woman got a role. She had a win. And I think, not yay, not, I want to celebrate this person, but, there goes my spot. And I think the issue is the spots. The issue is competing for crumbs, like we talked about. And I think the question, what do I do? What helps me? Maybe thinking, I don't want to compete for a crumb. I don't want to compete for a small spot. I want to compete for the whole loaf. I want to compete for something bigger, and maybe that competition isn't competition, it's drive, it's motivation, and so much of that comes from embracing the differences we have with other women, with working together, with listening, with rethinking our practices. So yeah, I don't want to compete for crumbs. I want something bigger.
Okay, all right. And Beth?
I mean, I agree with all of my panelists. I believe it's the system that forces us to think very narrowly about what the possibilities are, and that there are only a few crumbs or seats at the table, so we have to fight each other for it. That's what the system wants us to do. And so I think we have to, and that's part of YW's work, is we know that people are qualified, and it's the organizations that don't set people up for success. And so our focus is, how do we change the organizations? How do we change the system so that everybody has an opportunity to be successful, because everybody brings the skills already to the table. So that's how I think of it. And I don't take it personally when somebody comes after me. I've got kids, I got teenagers. I mean, I got people going after me all day. I don't have enough time for that.
Okay, all right. I want to thank our panelists today, and I want to thank you all for inviting me back to moderate this breakfast. I enjoy doing it every year, and with that, I'll turn it back to our able organizers of this fabulous event.
Whew. Take a deep breath. Let all of that incredible wisdom sink in. Our movement is intersectional. Our movement is intergenerational. Our movement is getting bigger day by day. And I hope that we all learn something about how we can all work together to build on the work that's been growing for more than 25 years, but 25 years in this breakfast space together. So another huge round of applause for our moderator, Karen, and our panelists. We have just two more announcements that we want to share. One is for everyone on the planning committee that has been mentioned before. Will you please stand up? And we know you're standing up online too. And I see you, Kim, standing up in the back in the hallway. This is a leaderful planning committee, and we encourage you to join us next year if you weren't able to join us this year in helping to curate this event. We also want you to get involved with our planning committee organizations, and so you can learn more about them by reading on the virtual program, or we've got a couple of tables in the back with takeaways, so you can sign up, get more involved, because we all know this is a 365-day work that we're doing here. Planning committee co-chairs.
I just have to exhale, right? I love that. You know, it's like we're not in high school anymore. I mean, not all of us. And we definitely have things to do, right? So I'm just still taking in all of the love and the wisdom that's been in this room. And I really appreciate everyone fellowshipping with each other. I see so many happy faces. And in putting this all together, that's like the goal. That's it for me. You know, I'm happy that everyone got to get up, get dressed, put on what they wanted to put on, and come in here with like the spirit of supporting each other. So I just want to say thank you all for coming, and I want to give a special thank you. I know from our committee coming together out of COVID, we received the baton from some great co-chairs from before us. So for one, I definitely want to say thank you to Jill Ashton. So I know she's here today as one of the two that we received the baton from. So I know that we're going to continue to create more inclusive space for all of us. So Jill, thank you for giving us as much institutional knowledge from the transition, coming and supporting us through the calls and the planning and showing up today. You've been very encouraging, very great to learn from. Because the way she ran a meeting, I was like, okay, I can, if she can do this, I can do this. She inspired me. So I just wanted to definitely give you your flowers here. Thank you so much for supporting us. So thank you.
It felt like I went to church. Honestly, this has been great. It's not competition, it's collaboration, ladies. We need one another to build on the policies we need to be passed for our collective good and for the good of our children and our children's children. And call to action, get on busy. It's not cool to be continuously busy. And for me, the best takeaway, recognizing the Marias, because we tend to overlook the Marias. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, the planning committee. We did it. Happy International Women's Day.